Good afternoon, YouTube. This is man with George Page coming to you live on YouTube. Well, I got some breaking news for you. Breaking news if you haven't heard about it. I know many of us here in America don't really care much about it, but the fact is, this is something that needs to be spoken about. As you know, Queen Elizabeth II has passed away. And it's just for many of us Americans, we have this long kind of allegiance to America, to the Great Britain, and and even though this country kind of got from under royalty, we still, as Americans per se, we still follow the royal family, and we still take interest in it. Mostly a lot of Americans, but me, even me, I can't help it. I do watch the news anytime I hear something about the royal family. But as you know, Queen Elizabeth was the longest reigning monarch in the history of Great Britain. Many monarchs have passed away, this or that, but she was the one that was just, I think, had probably the most success as a monarch. And also, there were some things that were kind of iffy during her reign. As you know, she was born in 1926 to her father, who was actually the second oldest in the line. His Prince Albert, to his brother David. As you know, David was going to be king someday, and she had a good relationship with Uncle David, marrying her, and her sister Margaret were the only two children of her mother and her father, the prince. But she was very quiet child, a very introvert child, But as you know, the story goes, her father, Prince Albert, became King George IV after her uncle, who was at one point King Edward, advocated the throne to marry some woman who was two times divorced and looked like a man. And then she was put in a new spotlight now that she was now becoming the heir to the throne. And she, during the time of the war, when World War II started, she was a member of the military. She volunteered, did a lot of service. She often did speeches, to inspire the young children. Then around, she met young Prince Philip, who's per se, from the story I heard, they were actually somewhat related. They were second or third cousins twice removed, and he was a prince of another family, of another line. And they eventually fell in love and got married. And this was her true love. This is, I think, the first true man she ever loved. And there was often stories about him, but we don't get to that too much. To speak ill of dead too much. And then as she grew up, she was being groomed to be taking her father's place as king. But then in '52, right off in the '50s, she gave birth to her two oldest children. That was Charles and Princess Anne. And then by '52, her father, King Albert, passed away. Some say it was issues with cancer. And then she was pushed into the spotlight and became the first queen in almost maybe 100 years since her great great grandmother, Queen Elizabeth. And and this was a big thing for her now. She was now queen. And she, as you know, originally she wasn't, as a child, wasn't groomed for it, but later on, after her uncle David gave up the throne, she was being groomed along the way. And during that time, she really was a monarch. As you know, the royal family ruled so many lands, territories such as Canada, Northern Ireland, also Jamaica. And they traveled when different times. But she also had two more children after Anne and Charles. She had her second oldest son, Andrew, and her youngest son, Edward. And then her and Philip, the relationship was a great relationship. He was very, you know, a very outgoing person. He tried to pull her out of her shell. Sometimes you see them together. He was the one that really got her into being around people a lot. She's a very private lady. Like I said again, she was more introverted than anything. Later on, around about the '80s, she induced her son Charles to Diana Spencer, and the Spencer family were had a long relationship with the royal family, and eventually they got married. And later on, Diana gave birth to her two sons, William and Henry. Harry. Why I say it's Harry. And you all know the story about what happened between Charles and Diana. He was an affair with Charles' current wife, Camilla, and they eventually got divorced. And she was fighting for custody for her two sons, but till she passed away around about '97. And then, eventually, Charles married Camilla Parker Bowles, and the Queen stepped up. She was kind of like a mother figure for the boys after they lost their mother. And her relationship with Philip was one of those great relationships of being together a long time, even though those stories of affairs, but you don't want to talk about Yellow the Dead. But the family also has some issues. I think there were stories that Charles, was a disappointment for his father Philip. But Charles, was going to become king someday. And she was a very celebrated monarch. She was very popular among celebrities, regular people, even celebrities here in America. And she was a lady who just was. She ruled, with very much respect and reverence as a monarch. She 70 years as queen. She has went through many prime ministers, like the great Winston Churchill was prime minister through her father's reign, her father and her reign, and even her grandfather's reign, and even her relationship with Margaret Thatcher, who was the first female prime minister. They was kind of standoff between each other, but even after Margaret left the politics and in her whiny years, they eventually kind of made amends between one another. And then recently, she um, um, was introduced to the new prime minister, as you know, Boris Johnson. He resigned because of the stuff he was doing during the his reign. Doing his well, not reign, more his term. And she met many presidents and diplomats, such as the President Harry S. Truman. She danced with Gerald Ford, the Obamas, the Bidens, and even she had a respectful relationship with the late President Nelson Mandela. You know. And even though her years, her and her children had the issues. There was issues with Anne's past. We all know about the stories about Charles and all that. And there's stuff that went on with Andrew. Not very good stuff right now. And then her issues that we were hearing about between her, um, Harry, and Megan, his wife. But I'm not gonna get to that much. But her greatest love was Philip, and he passed away last year. I did a video about that, and I know he was the one that really got her out of the shell. And then to lose him, I think might have just took a little bit out of her. He was the guy who was her rock. He was the one that really, when they out together, had a good time. He was the one that got her to open up to people. And I think that was a great loss to her. I've heard stories of some couples when you lose somebody, it just, not the same. It just don't feel like it's worth living. But she still did as she did as any monarch. She see people, she introduced, she did her duties as a queen. And she was passing on to her son. It was his turn. It was his time because her times was getting short. And she was dealing with illness, being that she was 96 years old. And even 96, you can't always, be as healthy as you should be. And it wasn't this summer we just celebrated the 70 years, which is the 70th jubilee of the Queen. And here it is with her grandson William, his wife, and her great grandchildren. I mean, boy, they have grown up. Seems like the baby was just born, and there's Charles and his wife. And most definitely, she was just a woman who just was committed to her country, and you have to respect that about that. But we all know now Charles, who is Charles III, he will be you know not sworn in. He'll be um, you know, uh, put on the throne. As you know, this is something he's been waiting for pretty much most of his life. And even with the controversy with stuff he's done, we all know about the phone calls and stuff like that. There's some questions that he's not gonna be as liked as respected as his mother was, and that's the hard thing. It's hard to live up to like a legend, especially your mother, how well respected she was. But it won't be long for maybe his passing, and we'll get William in the throne. But like I said, Queen Elizabeth, even though there were some things about her as a ruler, even though, like I said, the royal family do not have controlling power of the country, they still have interest in it, and they still have, a position, being that they are mostly landowners. But be her name, Queen Elizabeth II, she was a great lady, and let's remember her as she was a queen. So, as they often say, God save the queen. It's your man, always George Page. Don't like, subscribe. I'm out.